It's the Progress Pod, a production of the Franklin County Coalition for Progress. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman is currently traveling the state, visiting all 67 counties on what he's calling a recreational marijuana listening tour. We were able to catch up with the Lieutenant Governor as he was en route to Franklin County for his latest stop to find out what he's been hearing along the way. Hi, Lieutenant Governor. My name is Pete Mazzoni, and
Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on. With me is our producer, Jeremy Kate. We don't have much time here, so if I can just jump into some quick questions.
Yep. Let's just jump on in.
Okay, sounds good. What are you hearing out there? What's the feedback you're getting?
Well, I'm hearing all good feedback, and I mean that in the sense that it's all been civil and it's all been really participatory. Attendance has been robust. We had about 250 people come out to our meeting in Lycoming last night, and there's some things that have emerged, whether they're pro or con. People want to see marijuana almost universally, want to see it decriminalized. They don't believe that it belongs in the Schedule 1 at the federal level. They think
that's crazy.
They find that absurd. And they also strongly support decriminalization, regardless of no one wants to see anyone's lives ruined over, a petty marijuana charge or anything of that nature. And everyone loves the medical marijuana in terms of how grateful they are, the benefit that it's conferred on those folks. Even again, and those are some things that are run across whether they're pro or con.
Right. Do you have support from law enforcement?
Well, it depends. What you define as support. I would say I hear from an equal number of law enforcement. Like, for example, we had someone last night in Lycoming. He was a Baltimore police officer, and he used to work at Penn State as a police officer. And he said, "This is absurd. The war on drugs is a failure." And then we have other officers that believe that it's a gateway drug. So I would say there might be a slight bias of people that are for it in law enforcement versus opposed. But we do hear quite frequently from individuals, and I've met with statewide police chief groups, both at a local level and then also at their statewide organization. We're listening to their concerns and taking it all in.
Now, looking at the big picture, are you looking at some of the states where legalization is in place and kind of trying to understand what works and what doesn't?
Well, no, we're not in that sense. We're really going around trying to determine what Pennsylvania really thinks about this at a grassroots level. No pun intended.
Sure.
We want to go to we're going to all 67 counties, and we want to understand where are we at as a state, and we're doing that, and it's been great. Tonight in Franklin will be our 54th county, and I suspect it'll be as civil and as useful and engaged as they've all been. It's quite a streak that we have going.
No, that's great. Are you seeing support across the aisle for decriminalization?
Yeah. Very strong support for that. That's one of those universal ones that has emerged, regardless of whether they're, I hear, I'm not for, or I'm not there yet on recreational use. But it doesn't belong to criminalized. It just doesn't make sense. They would like to see it moved into the basket of, current, whether it's heroin or cocaine or crack or meth, and put it in more of the alcohol and cigarettes, tobacco basket, if you will, where it's more in line with that.
Right, more regulated, taxed, and more control over.
And another thing that's emerged that of those that support it and those that would reluctantly, I wouldn't say support it, but if they're like, well, if it's going to happen, they want to see it in something very similar to our state store system for alcohol, that it would be rigorously tested, rigorously taxed and monitored, and there'd be no upselling, and there wouldn't be like a Joe Camel for marijuana, things like that. they appreciate the state store system in that regard for control.
Do people have concerns about driving under the influence? Because it's my understanding right now there's no real roadside test that can be done.
Yes. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but that is one of the top concerns that we hear from those that are opposed is any potential increase in impaired driving.
Right.
There's definitely that concern. I hear that very frequently across county lines.
Right, and I guess the other major concern people are going to have is this product falling into the hands of kids.
Sure. Well, yeah. They're not so much falling in the hands is the effect that it has on developing minds.
Mm-hmm.
And would legalization somehow imply that it's okay, or it would increase use among those that are opposed to it?
Mm-hmm. Now,
among those that support it, their argument usually goes, I would want my child, if they're going to smoke marijuana, to have it be pure and tested and know exactly what it is, as opposed to some rando off the corner where you don't know where it came from, what's in it, and that kind of thing.
Isn't one of the big upsides of decriminalizing or even going to recreational that it can allow law enforcement to direct its energies at some of the big looming problems such as the opioid crisis? Yeah,
well, that comes up very frequently, and I can't tell you how often we will hear often tearful testimony from people that say that cannabis has helped free them from their opioid addiction or freed them from pain medications. They didn't have to be in full out addiction, but just it's an alternative path to opioids, whether they're hardcore addicts or whether they just don't like the way the medication makes them feel, and it's ineffectual, certainly when compared to cannabis.
Sure. Now, do you think that the state store model would get rid of the black markets, reduce the black markets? What effect do you think that would have?
I don't have an opinion. I'm just relaying what I hear from Pennsylvanians, where that whether they're for it or they'll be reluctantly okay with it. They're like, well, I don't really like it, but if it's coming, this is what this is the way I would want it, though. That's what I hear, is that they don't want there to be any marketing. They don't want there to be any upselling or
right.
Kind of like a Joe Camel of marijuana, or like a Juul kind of situation.
Sure, strawberry chocolate marijuana would be a terrible idea.
Exactly. In other words, they're providing access, not marketing it, not incentivizing it, that kind of thing.
Has anyone said anything that really, really caught you off guard that was very memorable?
Oh, all the time. Oh my gosh, there was a veteran last night that came in. He had his therapy dog, and he could barely get through his testimony, and just 37 months in Iraq, and he's just like, cannabis has saved my life. It's changed. Just this darkness lifted this my ability to kind of function, and we hear stories all the time, and that's what really makes it so powerful and I think compelling is that people share their rationale and their reasons for it, because it's not an issue where people generally are yes or no. It's like, well, no, and here's why, or yes, and here's why, and it's all very, I think, very engaging, and I think the other fellow audience members come away with a really great perspective as well too.
Sure, that's good for them to hear. Now, there are some cities throughout the state where they have already moved to a form of decriminalization. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, York, some of the other ones. Do you visit those locations, and is the feedback different there?
Well, Allegheny County and Philadelphia are yet we haven't gotten there yet. But our results pretty much what I had been not predicting, but what I had been relaying, my experience largely conforms to the major survey that was released on 4/20 from CBS News.
Interesting.
I had been saying that I would peg Pennsylvania's support somewhere in the mid to upper 60s, approaching maybe 70, not higher than 70.
Right.
And then sure enough, it came back at 65%.
Wow.
And in fact, Republicans were at 56%, which is exactly that many of our red county stops have a majority, but not an overwhelming majority. So we've been seeing, and I'm on record saying all of these things before that survey came out, and it's exactly conforms what we've been observing on the tour.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, I don't want to. Your time is limited, and I don't want to take up any more of it than necessary. Thank you so much for calling in, and good luck out there on your tour.
Thanks so much for your interest.
No problem, and we'd love to have you on sometime again.
Oh, anytime.
Okay.
You got my number.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
Find out more about our program at progresspod.org. You can also send us an email to progresspod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at The Progress Pod, and you can also find us on iTunes. Search for Progress Pod in the iTunes store, where you can subscribe to and rate the program. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.